Hello everyone, it's Joanne Fedler here, author and writing mentor. Today I'm going to talk a little bit about how we can make sure that when we write about ourselves, when we write our own stories, that we don't become narcissistic in our writing. It's so important when we are writing about our own experiences to feel as though that experience can speak to other people, that people are not going to think this is a big yawn, this is so self-indulgent. I know for a lot of writers that's our deepest fear, is that the writing that is closest to our hearts is going to appear narcissistic or self-indulgent. So, when we write character, how Hemingway taught us to think of a character as an iceberg. So underneath the layer of water is all the stuff we need to know about the character. And that's why we do character interviews, so that we really understand who the character is that we're talking about. We know everything about them. And it's only what we show, the little bit that sticks at the top of the water, that's what we show when we write. But we need to still have a real depth of understanding and knowledge about the character underneath the surface. So there's a difference between what we know and what we show. Of course, when it comes to writing about ourselves, we need to think about ourselves as a character, because certainly for a reader, we are a character. Readers don't know who we are, so we have to think of ourselves and think of writing about ourselves as if we were a character. So we do want to have a depth of knowledge of who we are that sits underneath the text that we're writing about. Readers need to feel confident that they are in the hands of an adept storyteller, somebody who has richly conceived who they are. And if we are to richly conceive ourselves, what we really have to bring to the writing is a sense of the enormous nature of the self, the complexity of the self. So not to flatten our experience, not to write in cliches, but to really bring a sense to the writing that there is a curiosity that we have about ourselves. When we write about ourselves, we should think about ourselves the way that the Japanese painter Hokusai thought of Mount Fuji. He painted Mount Fuji from 100 different views, and he believed that you could only ever claim to know or understand something if you had seen it from 100 different views. So when we are writing, it's important to give the sense that we know that we're writing from a version of who we are, but that there is this complexity. There are always many dimensions to the self. Parts to the self that we know that we don't show others, parts of ourselves that we don't even know. There can be shadow selves, skeletons, all kinds of secrets and shadows, concealed selves, and also the unknown self, the self that we actually is yet to evolve, the self that is still coming into experience. So when we write, it's important for us to have a sense of self-knowledge, which includes the sense of paradox, that sense of ambiguity, that sense of deep complexity, but at the same time to show a certain version of the self, but to bring a sense of humor, a sense of awareness that we really are only showing. We're advertising. There's just that little bit at the top that we're showing, but that there is much more beneath. And when we write from a place of curiosity about who we are, when we come with a sense of beginner's mind about who it is that we are exploring when we write, we open, we have a sense of expansion. It's almost like in that moment, we transcend that narcissistic self. We speak into a much broader universal self that contains all of us. When we have a sense that we are connected to all these other selves, the selves beneath the surface, in a way, we are speaking into the universal idea of all of us. All of us are multitudes. We contain contradictions, paradoxes. So when we are writing about our loving self, for us to always keep in mind that there is also the brutal, murderous self somewhere beneath the surface. And that connects us to those people who are brutal and murderous, much as we like to think of ourselves in only one dimension, or in certain dimensions, favorable dimensions, shall I say. So that's a useful idea when we are writing, is to think of ourselves as these multitudinous personalities, to also understand that self-knowledge is incredibly important, but that it's also ever-changing. It's an ever-changing frontier. We can never claim to have infinite knowledge of who we are. And I think also when we do, we kind of limit the sense of possibility when we write. So I hope that's a useful tip for you today on your writing day, and have fun exploring all those beautiful selves that you are.